Hey all, I just wanted to make this video. I don't know if anybody necessarily wants this, but there seem to be, especially with the removal of the linked nodes in Alliance Quest, more people have been asking about Map 6 and especially Map 7 because it is such a unique planning challenge for those who haven't done it yet. And so I just figured that I would take some time and run through my own Alliance Quest path. So this first fight is one of the most annoying that I have, and it's actually the main reason that I use Sorcerer Supreme over Doom, despite how good of a counter he is to Footloose in most places. If you notice, I used her pre-fight to start in that Ragador's Resolve, the armor phase, because that means that by the time I get to my first bar of power, I will be in the icon phase, which allows me to throw the slow. And that means that I should never have to deal with his unstoppable as long as I stay on top of things. Now, this is something of a challenge because he has that armor up, and it is a very powerful armor up. So basically, if you don't want to rely on crits, you are going to need to mix in some special ones to keep that nullify aura up. But as much as possible, I prefer to use the special 2 because basically as long as you've applied any of the runes you want, using the special 2 because it pauses them means that it doesn't matter what phase you're in when you throw your specials. I think this is really something key to using Sorcerer anywhere, whether you're trying to stack armor breaks, keep uptime on the slow debuff, or just max out her healing. The biggest thing that you want to do is just chain L2s, in my personal opinion. Now, on some nodes, the special 3 does bonkers amounts of damage once you set up enough runes. But on this, because if he gets that, I think it's a 90% armor up. If he gets that back right before I throw the special 3, it does almost nothing. So even for damage, special 2s are the way to go. You can see how close we're coming here. This is where a 6-star Sorcerer Supreme would be really nice for me because I do sometimes time out on this first fight in later days. But she gets it done, and with her slow, steady healing, it's really not that big a deal if she does time out. It just means I have to spend more time here. So on this one, you'll notice I am going to parry fairly freely because I can. We do parry curse first in my alliance. I recently found out that that's not as common as I thought it was, but our logic is that the main challenge for parry curse is block damage, as you can see with what I just took on just 2 hits from Red Skull there. And so we like to get that out of the way while the attack values and the health values of the defenders are at their lowest. As you can see, that last special 2, I wasn't even in the icon phase that's so important to me, but I just threw it because it paused everything I already had up. Again, that's really the biggest thing with Sorcerer. I try and make sure that I get that slow rune out of the gate with her by using the pre-fight, and then after that, I just try and throw as many L2s as I possibly can, and I honestly don't pay that much attention to which phase she's in. And as you can see, even without crits, just from her stacking armor breaks, she does pretty well. If I get really unlucky on like the Turn the Tide modifier, I have timed out on Red Skull before, but it is not common. This Wolverine can be tricky because I find about every 2 weeks or so, and actually I think I did it the second day when we had Cascading Failure, I will forget about Strike Back for like 3 seconds and send him red, and then I will force quit and do this fight again from half health. It just happens. But as long as you stay on top of it, Sorcerer is actually quite good with her sustain. If you're spamming those special 2s and you're keeping things paused, she can have that slow, reliable healing, basically at like an Old Man Logan level, and eventually she'll just get right back up. So for those who aren't as familiar with her, The first time you throw her special 3, it locks in a permanent rune so that every special you throw for the rest of the fight will trigger that effect. So every special I get will now trigger armor up. That actually wasn't what I had in mind, um, because the most important one here is the slow, but it will just make the fight over faster, and it's not a huge deal. You also see why I like having Mystic Dispersion at 5 so much in this fight, because between her Nullify and just the natural expiration of buffs on the opponent, um, it's really not difficult to chain those L2s and keep all of your debuffs and your armor, your healing up. So this next one is a pretty good illustration of Sorcerer's energy resistance, because those shocks are honestly quite annoying. You can do this fight with Doom, um, but I found that sometimes even that's annoying because Hulkbuster's ability accuracy reduction on those armor ups will get in the way, and you can't really play Doom normally. It is what it is. Doom will work for this path, but like I said, I've just found, after testing a lot of options, that Sorcerer is the one most likely to work for me on all of the various modifiers for this path, and she also works well for the paths I take later, and we'll talk about that. So, as you can tell, I have taken a bit of damage, both from blocking that L2 and from the shocks, and so I kind of made a point there to get into my armor up phase and get that healing going. Between that and the armor ups, or the armor breaks that he applies, this fight can actually be pretty good for healing. It's also a great way to die incredibly quickly if you eat one of those specials, but if you stay on top of things, it's not that big a deal. See, right now we have 5 of those healing runes up. 200 per tick on somebody who is not primarily known as a healer is pretty darn good. And yeah, we've finished out the path now with a full yellow bar. Did accidentally trigger parry once. Oh well. So now we're moving on to Diss Track in Tier 2. There are a lot of good options for this. I've used Claire for it before. You'll see me use Elsa on the next fight. Sunspot works really well. I've actually used Massacre a bit, and he's actually who I use on day 2 because Elsa just does not work very well on the Cascading Failure day. But by far my favorite is Apocalypse. I now have a 6-star Apocalypse as well, but I prefer the Sustain on the 5-star because I have his Sig pretty high. I think it's at 120 now, maybe 140. And so as long as I can alternate a fight, I can keep him topped up pretty well, even if I eat a full combo to the face like I did at the start of this fight for basically no reason. One of the biggest things, both against Karnak in general, because his stuns can be on the shorter side, and on Parry Curse, because you don't want to trigger those stuns if you don't have to, I find that really getting Apocalypse's spacing down for his heavies, both after the opponent's Special 1 or Special 2 if it's a different opponent, and after their heavies, is really helpful for keeping all of those buffs up and making sure that this fight is quick and efficient. He does have kind of a weird heavy. There's a big pause after that first relatively short range hit before the second hit, and so you kind of have to experiment with a little bit to get it safe. But he is an excellent option for Karnak. So now we have this Luke. I really like using Elsa on opponents that I don't want to stun. See, right there I tried to trigger his Indestructible before I started doing damage to him, and then I started doing these other things. This isn't necessarily my normal Elsa rotation, by the way. Normally I focus on ending in light attacks to get those busted debuffs up and do the most damage possible. But I'm alternating my combo enders here because we have the Juke global, and I like to just get her damage up and get this node down as quickly as possible. Like I said, she's not great for the Cascading Failure day because it punishes critical hits so much, but I've found that she's really quite good for basically anything else, because even her specials aren't that important. You see how easy it is to stay at 3 or more debuffs on this fight, and Luke's just going down. I mean, it's only day 1, and our prestige is not as high as it could be, but it's pretty high, and that was a 5-star on map 7, and that took just about a minute. So now we have Blade, who of course reduces the duration of debuffs based on his own power. He can be a little annoying for that purpose, especially if he doesn't want to throw his special. Off to a good start. This fight just annoys me. It's actually one of the biggest reasons that I make a point of using somebody else for the Luke fight so I can get some regen back on Apocalypse for this fight, because I just consider that like the fair price we pay for eating that first L2. So notice that I tried to bait his power down as low as possible, land a heavy to get my 2 bleeds off, and then I threw my first special so that all of the burst damage actually landed. This is a big thing with this fight and with Apocalypse on Diss Track in general, is that your burst damage does nothing if you don't have 3 debuffs up, which means that if you don't use the heavy, if they're not bleed immune, then the first 2 specials do nothing, which is the other reason I use somebody else for Luke, because Apocalypse can do that fight, but it's not particularly fun. So at that point, I just get hit. That's what happens when you miss a parry. Yeah, could have done better. But that's another reason I like using Apocalypse, because unlike Sunspot and some of the other best answers, unlike Massacre, he can heal. And yep, I lost the weakness again. That happens sometimes with Blade just because he shrugs them faster. I make peace with it, especially when he's being difficult to bait. I have timed out on this fight before as well. And honestly, I probably should have finished that heavy, but I just wanted to get the weakness up again. I knew this would work. We're behind pace, but I also know just how much damage Apocalypse can do on this fight once he is set up. I'm not really worried, I'm more just annoyed. And that's fairly common on this node. Blade is usually annoying on this fight. Okay, so now he threw that. And I often cancel Apocalypse's heavy into his specials, but I didn't right there because I noticed that we were on the wrong one and it would have just tried to reapply the weakness, and that would have been a complete waste of a special. So that's why I just used the full heavy and then did the shortened combo to make sure we were ending on a medium. And now I cancel in because I don't need another debuff, I just want the fight to be over. So next up we have Massacre, who just replaced Crossbones because his debuff shrug chance went from, I think it maxed out at like 25, 26% to 90. So yeah, it's probably good that they took him off that, because Apocalypse would still have been fantastic for him because he reduces Purify chance, but most others would have had a problem. So I think that was a good move. I think it's a little bit annoying that they replaced him with Massacre, though, because I feel like whenever Kabam puts Massacre on something, they're just like, oh, he has block penetration. Enjoy taking more block damage. It is what it is. Apocalypse will have his chance to heal because I'm definitely going to take fights after this with somebody else. So notice there is what I'm talking about. I don't think I'd actually practiced this one. I just kind of watched the first one. But I threw that heavy after his special 1 to get the bleeds up and to refresh the debuffs from Apocalypse's specials, because you really don't want those falling off on Diss Track, as happened a few times in that Blade fight. It takes some practice to get different special timings down, but once you do, it feels pretty safe, and I think it really completes his kit. Because especially against somebody like Massacre, who has that block penetration, you just really don't want to be parry heavying. I mean, look how much that last parry cost me. Anyway, only 90 seconds, less than that. Yeah, definitely an easier fight than Crossbones used to be. So this Iron Fist is a fight that I don't think I've ever taken before. But now that they got rid of the linked nodes and I don't have to wait for somebody else to do it, might as well. Yeah, I'm reading over that. Okay, he's stun immune. Major League means, okay, use Apocalypse. But I'm actually going to not, because as I said, I'd rather have more fights in between now and the next time I use Apocalypse so that he gets that healing. I know that he's going to do triple damage to Elsa, but I'm just planning on not taking that damage. She's actually very good against stun immune and against high block damage champions because she has that evade counter. And so I know that I'm just going to rely on that. Um, I'm going to use that for my openings. There I ended up taking a blocked hit. It hurt, but it wasn't the end of the world. I really wasn't planning on using her for another fight at all after this, although I do end up using one more. But again, um, just from using her evade counter, intercepts, and countering his specials, another fight ended in less than a minute with a 5-star Elsa. She is so much fun, man. Alright, we have this Heimdall, starts with a bar of power, loves to back you up at the start before throwing it. I've had him go 40 seconds before he throws that first special. It is what it is. Accidentally threw a parry there. I'm going to try to avoid any more. Sorcerer is actually at half health here because I took the White Magneto mini boss. I don't think I'd ever taken it with her before, so I didn't play it perfectly. I ended up timing out when he had 1% left, and I came back in and killed him in a single medium. We've all been there. Anyway, that's why she's at half, but, you know, already she's up to 60 here, and you can see the value in her healing runes. I would have loved to have thrown that L2 and locked in all of those effects we had up, but, you know, you really don't want to push Heimdall to his special 2 when he has an armor up. That is a great way to either die or, if you're fast enough, force quit and lose half health. Anyway, here you see what her special 3 can do. I didn't even have very many runes there. Yeah, it actually looks like I think I may have had 1, or no, it looks like 2. And she gets boosted damage for each rune, so that was about as weak as it can possibly be, and it was still a fair amount of damage. She's fun. So just accidentally landed another parry. This happens sometimes, that sword catches me off guard. Oh well. He's coming down. We're still at 60%, but I am definitely going to try and get off these armor runes so that I can get some more healing, and of course every single hit of that special crits, and the fight's over before I can get any healing. C'est la vie. Alright, this Archangel, kind of like the Iron Fist, not a fight I normally take. I instantly realized this was a bad idea for me to attempt on Parry Curse. The last time I took this, I was using Doom, and so he gets those easy openings and the power control so that you don't have to worry about the specials, and yeah, just way, way better than Apocalypse because of that heavy hitter node. So I fast forwarded this because it was not an ideal counter, and I just end up taking a ton of block damage. That wasn't ideal. What I did notice here is that while the parry curse node cuts down on your parry stuns too much for you to safely retaliate, um, it doesn't seem to reduce Apocalypse's stun through block by enough to stop you from continuing with your combo. So he's actually pretty good at avoiding that. But now Apocalypse basically doesn't have parries for the rest of this map. That's fine. Again, showing off Sorcerer Supreme's energy resistance here. She's a very good option for this Iceman because of that. I sometimes bring Human Torch. He's also pretty solid for Diss Track because nobody on that path is immune to Incinerate. And then obviously you can just use his pre-fight on this Iceman, do a lot of damage, don't take any Cold Snap. Works great. But I really like Sorcerer here because of her energy resistance. You have to be like at 15% health or less for her to die from Cold Snap. And so this is just a nice, long, slow fight. You have the armor breaks, you have the healing. You just take him down. Alright, this Karnak here is I think actually my least favorite fight on this whole thing. Notice how much Apocalypse healed right at the beginning there. That's fantastic. Like I said, I used the stun there to get around Parry Curse. Once Apocalypse is at 4 charges, that's pretty nice. But this Karnak has both Strike Back and Power of Reserve, which means that it's extremely easy to send him red. And he also really loves to back you up. So basically, you just slow play it. I'm going to use a lot of heavies because that helps, in my experience, get them to throw specials more often. But basically, I'm just going to play it slow, let him throw his specials, and I'm going to try and get his power down as low as I can before I throw my own specials to finish this. With that, not exactly what I wanted, but I figure, alright, we can get one more special out of him, get him under a bar of power, and then I should be able to finish this. Yep, let's see. Awesome. Now, if I hadn't taken that Archangel fight and I still had the ability to parry, probably could have kept the debuffs up from that first L1, and I wouldn't have even needed that L2. Another L1 would have easily done enough, but it works. Anyway, like I said, I wasn't planning on using Elsa again, but with how low Apocalypse was, I just figured this would be more fun. Elsa does get bonuses against large and extra large champions, of which Howard is one. And so, yet again, especially now that she doesn't have to worry about Thunderquack, which was honestly really annoying for her because if her counter was on cooldown, then you had to basically parry twice to stun him and get it off you. She was actually really bad for him in that sense. But now that that's gone and we never have to worry about Thunderquack again, yet again, Elsa finishes quickly. Hope this was helpful to you guys. I'm not planning on doing this for every path because I don't take every path. But, you know, for anyone looking at these specific fights, I hope this is helpful. Take care.